Ambassador Ko Minna sat in the massive crystal chamber, her fingers tracing over the electronic tablet displaying the Terran Vexarian Accords. The words glowed softly against the shimmering walls of the Imperial Palace, each line representing months of heated debates and sleepless nights. 3 years had passed since she had signed this document, and the memory still felt fresh in her mind. She remembered how different everything was back then. The war had just ended, leaving both sides exhausted and bitter. Human colonies were struggling to rebuild after the devastating attacks, while the Vexarian Empire was dealing with unexpected resistance from what they considered a minor species. Nobody wanted to admit it, but both sides desperately needed peace. The Vexarians were unlike anything humans had ever encountered. Their bodies were made of living crystal that reflected light in beautiful patterns, making them look like walking gemstones. They had ruled over 43 different worlds for centuries, crushing any opposition with ruthless efficiency. When they first met humans, their reaction was predictable. They saw Earth's people as nothing more than soft, weak creatures who would surrender quickly. How wrong they were. Ko Minna smiled slightly, remembering the shock on General Tarvin's face when human forces refused to give up even after losing 3 major battles. The Vexarians expected humans to beg for mercy, but instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that grew more determined with every defeat. Human soldiers would charge crystal formations with nothing but metal weapons, knowing they would likely die but refusing to retreat. The negotiations that followed were brutal in their own way. Ko Minna had spent 2 full years traveling between Earth and the Imperial Palace, sitting through endless meetings where both sides hurled insults and threats. The Vexarian negotiators, led by Minister Kexnel, treated her like a barbarian at first. They spoke over her, ignored her proposals, and made it clear they thought humans were wasting everyone's time. But Ko Minna had patience that surprised even herself. She learned their customs, studied their history, and slowly earned their respect. She discovered that Vexarians valued strength above all else, so she showed them human determination. When they tested her knowledge, she proved humans were quick learners. When they questioned human honor, she demonstrated it through her actions. The breakthrough came when she saved Minister Kexnel's life during a terrorist attack on the palace. A rebel group had planted explosives, and Ko Minna pushed the Vexarian minister to safety, taking shrapnel wounds in the process. That moment changed everything. The Vexarians realized humans weren't just stubborn, they were capable of genuine courage and sacrifice. Now, sitting in the same crystal halls where she had fought for peace, Ko Minna couldn't help but feel proud of what they had accomplished together. Emperor Vextar stood before the massive holographic display in his war room, his crystalline body pulsing with angry red light. The numbers floating in the air told a story that made his ancient blood run cold. Human colonies were not just surviving, they were thriving beyond anything the Vexarian analysts had predicted. "Look at these reports," he growled, his voice echoing through the chamber like breaking glass. New Sol Colony was supposed to struggle for decades just to grow basic crops. Instead, they're feeding 12 other worlds and exporting surplus food across 3 star systems. General Cordan stepped forward, his own crystal form shifting to a darker shade. "My Emperor, the terraform settlement has achieved something we thought impossible. They are growing crops in soil that our best scientists declared completely barren. Not only that, but their harvest yields are 3 times higher than our most fertile worlds." The Emperor's advisors exchanged nervous glances. For over 1,000 years, the Vexarian Empire had maintained control through superior technology and resources. Their worlds were efficient, their systems proven, their methods refined through centuries of conquest. Yet somehow, these soft-skinned humans were making them look like amateurs. "Mining Station Beta is even worse," continued General Cordan, pulling up new data. "They're extracting rare metals from asteroids we abandoned as worthless. Their techniques are so effective that they're producing more resources in 6 months than our established mining worlds produce in 2 years. Defense Minister Kalora spoke up, her voice tight with concern. Emperor, our intelligence suggests they're using methods we've never seen before. They combine different technologies in ways that shouldn't work, but somehow do. It's like they think completely differently than any species we've encountered. Emperor Vexstar's form brightened with realization and fear. During the war, we assumed they were fighting at full capacity. Their ships were smaller, their weapons less advanced, their tactics straightforward. We thought we understood their limitations. What if we were wrong? General Cordan asked quietly. What if they were holding back? What if they signed the peace treaty, not because they had to, but because they wanted to? The implications hung heavy in the crystalline air. The Vexarian Empire had built its power on being superior to every species they encountered. They had never faced an enemy that seemed to grow stronger through adversity, that turned disadvantages into advantages, that treated impossible challenges as interesting puzzles to solve. Emperor Vexstar's glow shifted to a dangerous orange. If humans were hiding their true capabilities during the war, then our peace treaty was signed under false pretenses. They deceived us. The seeds of betrayal were planted in that moment, watered by fear and wounded pride. Mina was enjoying her morning tea in her quarters when the first emergency alert screamed through her communication device. The sound was so sharp and urgent that she nearly dropped her cup, hot liquid splashing across her desk. Her hands shook as she activated the holographic display, expecting to see some minor trade dispute or diplomatic issue. Instead, her world collapsed. The first transmission came from New Sol Colony. The image was grainy and filled with static, but she could see flames reaching toward the night sky. Colony Administrator Park Jinwoo's face appeared on screen, his usually calm demeanor replaced by pure terror. This is New Sol calling for immediate assistance. His voice cracked. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Vexarian ships appeared without warning and began bombardment. The residential districts, they're gone. Oh God, the children's sector took a direct hit. Ko Mina felt her heart stop. The children's sector housed over 15,000 families. She had visited there just last month, watching kids play in the carefully maintained gardens while their parents worked to build a new life among the stars. Now Park Jinwoo was telling her it was simply ... gone, before she could process the first report. 2 more emergency channels activated simultaneously. Terraform's distress signal showed similar devastation. The agricultural domes that fed millions of people across multiple star systems were nothing but twisted metal and burning crops. The settlement's medical officer, Dr. Lee So-young, appeared briefly on screen covered in ash and blood. Medical facilities destroyed, she reported in a broken voice. We can't help the wounded. Too many wounded. The attack came during sleep cycle. Most people never had a chance to reach the shelters. Mining Station Beta's transmission was even worse. The entire asteroid mining operation had been reduced to floating debris. Station Commander Kim Tae-ho managed one final message before his transmission cut to static. They hit us with everything. Station breaking apart. Tell Earth. Tell them the Vexarians broke the peace. Tell them to remember us. Ko Mina sat in stunned silence as the reports continued flowing in. Each update brought more devastating news. Entire neighborhoods wiped out, schools destroyed, hospitals targeted. These weren't military strikes against armed enemies. This was the systematic murder of sleeping families. Over the next few hours, the full scope of the atrocity became clear. 250,000 human civilians had been killed in coordinated attacks that lasted less than 30 minutes. The Vexarian Empire, the same government she had worked with for 3 years to build peace, had betrayed everything they had agreed upon. The official Vexarian statement arrived 6 hours later, delivered with cold bureaucratic efficiency. The Empire has conducted preemptive defensive actions against suspected military installations that posed a threat to galactic stability. Kaomina stared at those words until they burned into her memory. Military installations. They were calling sleeping children a military threat. Kaomina didn't bother with protocol as she burst through the crystal doors of the Imperial throne room. The massive chamber, usually filled with the respectful murmur of court officials, fell completely silent. Her footsteps echoed loudly against the polished crystal floor as she marched directly toward the towering figure of Emperor Explain, she demanded, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Explain how you could murder 250,000 innocent people in their sleep. Emperor Vextar's crystalline form pulsed with cold blue light as he looked down at her. From his elevated throne, his voice, when he spoke, carried no emotion whatsoever. Ambassador Kaomina, your species has violated the spirit of our agreement. The industrial capacity your colonies demonstrated far exceeds what was disclosed during our negotiations. Kaomina felt her carefully maintained diplomatic composure beginning to crack. Industrial capacity? You're talking about farmers and miners. People who grow food and extract resources to build better lives for their families. People who clearly possess technological capabilities that were hidden from us. The Emperor replied with the same emotionless tone. Your colonies achieved production levels that make our established worlds appear inefficient. This suggests deliberate deception during treaty negotiations. The other alien ambassadors present in the throne room watched nervously as Kaomina took another step forward. They had never seen the usually calm human diplomat display anything other than perfect professional control. So your response, Kaomina said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, was to bomb sleeping children. Emperor Vextar's form brightened slightly, the only sign he recognized her growing anger. The Empire took necessary preemptive action against potential military threats. Casualties were within acceptable parameters for such an operation. Those words hit Kaomina like a physical blow. Acceptable parameters. Acceptable losses. She thought of little Park Soo-jin from New Seoul Colony, who had given her a drawing of Earth during her last visit. She thought of the medical students at Terra Farm who were learning to treat alien species. She thought of the miners at Station Beta who sent half their earnings back to support their elderly parents on Earth. Her hands began to shake, not from fear, but from a rage so pure and intense that it threatened to consume her entirely. For 3 years, she had worked tirelessly to build bridges between species. She had swallowed her pride, adapted to alien customs, and genuinely believed that peace was possible. Acceptable losses, she repeated quietly, her voice barely audible, but somehow filling the entire chamber. The diplomatic mask she had worn for so long was finally slipping away, revealing something that made even the Crystal Emperor take notice. The other ambassadors could sense that something fundamental had changed in the small, human woman standing before the most powerful ruler in the galaxy. Kaomina stood perfectly still in the center of the throne room, her voice dropping to a whisper, so quiet that everyone had to strain to hear her words. But there was something in that whisper that made the crystal walls seem to vibrate with tension. Your Majesty, she said, each word carefully measured, you have made a mistake that cannot be undone. You have crossed a line that my species will never forgive. Emperor Vextar's crystalline form flickered with what might have been amusement. The other alien ambassadors shifted nervously, sensing the electric tension building between the human and the most powerful ruler in the galaxy. You think you understand humans because you fought our colonial defense forces, Kaomina continued, her eyes never leaving the Emperor's glowing face. You think you know our capabilities because you saw our mining ships and farming equipment, but you have never seen what happens when Earth itself goes to war. The Emperor's laughter rang through the chamber like shattering glass. Your threats are amusing, Ambassador. We have observed your military capacity. Your colonial fleets barely qualified as a nuisance during our conflict. A few dozen ships with primitive weapons hardly constitute a meaningful threat to the Vexarian Empire. Koamine's smile was cold enough to freeze starlight. Those weren't our military ships, Your Majesty. Those were civilian vessels hastily converted for defense. Mining ships with welded-on weapons. Cargo haulers carrying makeshift missiles. Farmers and miners playing soldier because they had no choice. Several of the alien observers exchanged glances. They had assumed, like the Emperor, that they had seen humanity's full military might during the previous conflict. You want to know about proportional response? Koamine asked, her voice still barely above a whisper, but somehow filling the entire throne room. My people have a saying, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. We tried to follow that wisdom. We held back. We fought defensively. We sought peace. She took one step closer to the throne, and despite being a fraction of the Emperor's size, somehow she seemed to loom over him. But you didn't take our eye, Your Majesty. You didn't attack our soldiers or our ships or our military bases. You murdered our children while they slept. You bombed our hospitals and schools. You have awakened something in humanity that we hoped would never be necessary again. Emperor Vextar's form brightened with dismissive arrogance. Empty words from a defeated species. Your colonial forces were pathetic. What could your homeworld possibly possess that would concern the Vexarian Empire? Koamine's next words sent a chill through every being present. You're about to find out. But the Emperor merely laughed, dismissing her warning as the desperate bluffing of a broken diplomat representing a beaten people. He would learn how wrong he was. Koamine's fingers moved quickly across her encrypted communication device as she walked away from the throne room. The message she sent was only 3 words long, but those 3 words would change the course of galactic history. Protocol Dragon authorized. The signal traveled faster than light across the void of space, reaching Earth's communication networks within hours. In hidden command centers buried deep beneath mountains and ocean floors, alarms began to sound. Military personnel who had been waiting for years suddenly sprang into action, their faces grim but determined. Admiral Lee Sung stood in the primary command center, located 3 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean. He had been preparing for this moment since the day the peace treaty was signed. As Koamine's authorization code appeared on his screen, he turned to address the hundreds of officers gathered around him. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what was about to happen. The Vexarian Empire has just learned why we never show our full strength unless we face extinction. Begin Dragon Protocol activation immediately. Across the Sol system, something extraordinary began to happen. Asteroids that had drifted peacefully in the belt for decades suddenly split open like giant metal flowers, revealing massive shipyards hidden within their rocky shells. These weren't the converted mining facilities the Vexarians had seen during the war. These were purpose-built weapons of war that had been constructed in absolute secrecy. In Earth's deepest ocean trenches, sections of the seafloor began to rise. What the world's governments had told everyone were deep-sea research stations were actually underwater construction facilities. Enormous ships that had never seen sunlight began their slow journey to the surface, their hulls gleaming with technologies that had never been tested in actual combat. Admiral Lee Sung watched the reports flowing in from across human space. Jupiter Base reports 47 heavy cruisers, ready for deployment. Saturn Ring facility has 32 destroyers powered and armed. Asteroid Base 7 shows 15 dreadnoughts, fully operational. The numbers kept climbing. Ships that existed in no official records, weapons that had never been mentioned in any treaty negotiations, and military technologies that had been developed in facilities so secret that most government officials didn't know they existed. During the Vexarian conflict, Admiral Lee Sung explained to his staff, "We followed one simple rule. Never reveal your true capabilities, unless your species faces complete extinction. The Vexarians saw our defensive forces, farmers, and miners, with retrofitted ships. They never saw what Earth builds when we go to war. The sleeping giant was finally awake, and it was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. When the human war fleet finally revealed itself, every alien species in the galaxy realized they had fundamentally misunderstood what humans were capable of. The ships that emerged from Earth's hidden facilities looked nothing like the converted cargo vessels and mining ships the Vexarians had fought during the previous conflict. Admiral Lee Sung's flagship, the Terran Resolve, led a formation of vessels that seemed to bend the laws of physics, while every other galactic species had developed energy weapons that required massive power cores and elaborate charging sequences. Humans had taken a completely different approach to warfare. Vexarian Third Fleet detected in the Kepler 442 system, reported Communications Officer Kim Dayun. 47 ships in standard defensive formation. Admiral Lee Sung studied the tactical display with calm precision. Deploy kinetic imp. Calculate trajectory for maximum effectiveness, while avoiding the civilian orbital station. What happened next horrified military observers throughout the galaxy. Instead of the usual space battle, involving energy beams and explosive missiles, human ships launched what appeared to be simple metal rods. These projectiles accelerated to 90% of light speed, becoming invisible until the moment of impact. The Vexarian fleet commander never saw what hit them. One moment, 47 crystalline warships were patrolling their territory. The next moment, they simply ceased to exist, reduced to expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The attack had no warning, no dramatic light show, no chance for defense or counterattack. But the truly terrifying part came next. Human forces simultaneously struck 17 different Vexarian military installations across 12 star systems. Communication networks went dark as orbital relays were precisely eliminated. Moon-based weapon platforms disappeared without a trace. Military shipyards were reduced to scattered debris, while nearby civilian colonies remained completely untouched. Captain Park Min-ho coordinated the assault on the Vexarian naval base at Alpha Centauri B. His task force moved with a level of coordination that seemed impossible to alien military experts. While Vexarian ships required constant communication to maintain formation, human vessels operated as if they shared a single mind. Strike Team 7 has eliminated the primary defense grid, Park reported. Strike Team 3 has neutralized the command center. Strike Team 12 has disabled their communication array. Civilian evacuation routes remain clear and protected. The precision was surgical. Human forces could destroy a military command post while leaving the hospital next door completely undamaged. They eliminated weapon factories while carefully avoiding nearby schools. This wasn't just superior technology. It was a completely different philosophy of warfare. Other galactic powers watched in growing terror, as they realized that humans didn't just fight differently. They thought about war in ways that made every other military strategy look primitive and chaotic. Emperor Vextar was reviewing reports of the devastating human attacks when his personal aide burst into the throne room without announcement. The aide's crystalline form was flickering rapidly between colors, a sign of extreme panic that the Emperor had rarely seen in his 1,000-year reign. "My Emperor," the aide stammered, "you need to see this immediately." The massive holographic display activated, showing the space around their homeworld of Vexor Prime. What the Emperor saw made his ancient heart skip several beats. Surrounding his planet in perfect formation were ships unlike anything in his military databases. They hadn't appeared on any sensors, hadn't triggered any alarms, and hadn't been detected by the most advanced early warning systems in the galaxy. They were simply there, as if they had materialized from empty space itself. Admiral Lee Sung's flagship hung directly above the Imperial Palace, close enough that its shadow fell across the crystal spires. The other human vessels formed a sphere around the entire planet, positioned with mathematical precision that demonstrated complete tactical control. A communication request came through on the Emperor's private channel, the one reserved only for the most urgent diplomatic communications. When he accepted, Koene's face appeared on his screen. But this wasn't the diplomatic ambassador he remembered. Her eyes held something that made even the mighty Emperor feel a chill run through his crystalline spine. "Hello, Your Majesty," she said, her voice carrying the same deadly calm she had used in the throne room. "I hope you're having a pleasant day on your beautiful homeworld. I'm calling to present you with a choice." Behind her, Admiral Li Sung moved into view, his uniform bearing insignia that the Emperor now realized represented a military force he had never truly understood. Option 1, Ko Minna continued. "You surrender unconditionally. You and your war council will face trial for crimes against humanity. Your military will be dismantled, and your empire will be restructured under galactic supervision." The Emperor's form flickered with rage and fear. And Option 2, Ko Minna's expression didn't change. "Option 2 is that your homeworld joins New Sol, Terrafarm, and Mining Station Beta as a monument to what happens when someone breaks faith with humanity. The difference is, we'll make sure your civilians have time to evacuate first." The weight of realization crashed down on Emperor Vextar like a collapsing star. During their first conflict, humans had shown restraint. They had held back their true military power. They had sought peace even when they could have pursued total victory. They had offered mercy when they could have demanded vengeance. That mercy was gone now, withdrawn permanently by his own actions. The sleeping giant hadn't just awakened. It had learned that some enemies only understood one language. Ko Minna stood before the assembled representatives of 43 different alien species in the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, the same woman who had once worked tirelessly to build bridges between civilizations now commanded the attention of every government in known space. The Vexarian Empire's complete surrender had sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy, and everyone wanted to understand what had really happened. "Ladies and gentlemen of the Council," she began, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. "Recent events have forced humanity to reveal aspects of our nature that we had hoped would never be necessary. Today, I am here to establish a new framework for how our species will interact with the galaxy going forward." The alien delegates sat in complete silence. Some species that had previously ignored human diplomatic efforts now hung on her every word. Others who had considered humanity a minor nuisance were frantically taking notes. "Effective immediately, Earth is implementing the Terran Protection Doctrine," Ko Minna announced. "This doctrine is very simple. Any government, organization, or individual that deliberately targets human civilians will not face conquest, occupation, or territorial disputes. They will face extinction." A nervous murmur rippled through the assembly. Ambassador Ziltek of the Andromedan Federation raised a tentacle to speak. "Ambassador Ko Minna, surely you don't mean complete extinction of entire species?" Ko Minna's expression remained perfectly calm. "I mean exactly what I said. We tried the civilized approach. We offered friendship, trade partnerships, and mutual cooperation. We held back our true capabilities because we believed in the possibility of peaceful coexistence." She gestured toward the empty seats where the Vexarian delegation used to sit. "The Vexarian Empire chose to murder our children while they slept. They discovered that humans possess what may be the most dangerous combination of traits in the galaxy: profound compassion paired with absolute ruthlessness." The chamber remained dead silent as she continued. "We can be your greatest allies, or your final nightmare. We can help you build better worlds, or turn your planets into lifeless rocks floating in space. The choice of which version of humanity you encounter lies entirely with you." Ko Minna looked around the chamber, making eye contact with representatives from dozens of different worlds. "We wanted to be friends. We tried diplomacy, cooperation, and mutual respect. But the galaxy has taught us that some species only understand one language. She paused, letting her words sink in before delivering her final statement. Humanity is now fluent in that language too. The new galactic order had begun. The end.